suppose that's a good time to move on to that game against Inter Milan. It's a shift in attention away from the Premier League. I think sometimes that magnifying glass feels so big. We actually had 2 games without it. You come straight back onto it for one game, and all of a sudden we're all talking about that points gap. And again, you get one little bit of respite against for Inter Milan. Before we get into the build up to that game and what we think might happen, we're going to hear from Sun Sports chief football correspondent Charlie Wyatt, who is in Milan.
Hi guys, sorry I'm not there today, but as I think is pretty obvious, I'm at the San Siro in Milan ahead of tomorrow's game between Inter Milan and Arsenal. We'll be speaking to Mikel Arteta shortly and Gabriel Jesus. He's going to be the player that will be talking at the press conference ahead of a fascinating game. And it's not only fascinating because it's a big match, it's Inter Milan against Arsenal. It's the Serie A leaders against the Premier League leaders. But it's also an interesting one because there's no pressure on Arsenal. Mikel Arteta won't be agreeing with that later. But because they're in such a good position in the league and they're top of the group stage, even if they lose here, they're still going to be top. They're very likely to be top on Wednesday, going into the final game next week. So I want to see Mikel Arteta give a rest to a few tired legs. I'm sure he will change or make some changes. Tomorrow night, we want to see Christian Norgard out playing, don't we? You want to see Miles Lewis-Skelly, maybe even Kepa in goal. I'm sure Jesus will be playing up front. Because for me, it's all about Sunday's game against Manchester United. Arsenal are in such a good position in Europe. They don't have to worry about this game. But equally, it will be a game that Arteta and Arsenal expect to win. Because I think the big difference with Arsenal now, we look at their progress in terms of Premier League, don't we? But for me, Arsenal are now one of the most feared teams in Europe. Every game they play in Europe, they expect to win. And that shows you the difference with this team now under Arteta. So anyway, I hope to be in the studio in a week or so. Look forward to it. And again, be interested to see how they get on tomorrow night.
Thanks a lot to Charlie in Milan for that. So he's there on the ground. We're here ready to talk about it. Is it going to be a difficult test for Arsenal's players? Just not only because of this busy schedule, and not only because it's away, but because Inter Milan are a fantastic team.
Yeah, Inter are a good team. We saw last season when Arsenal went there in the Champions League how difficult they are. I mean, defensively, these are 2 of probably the best defences in Europe. And Inter obviously did very well in the Champions League last season. I do agree with you, though, they're kind of around just getting out of the title race just for a few games. Like, particularly earlier on in the season, I thought that with the Carabao Cup games where it was sort of Port Vale or something like that, where just the pressure valve can just be eased off, even with the supporters, just to think, I could just park that for like one night and, enjoy the game. And for this one, it is one where I think Arsenal can enjoy it because haven't 100% got a spot in the last 16, but it's basically mathematically done. I mean, I think they could even lose on Tuesday and still go through to the last 16. So yeah, I feel like it's an opportunity to kind of just park the title race a bit and maybe for Arteta to make some more changes. I don't know what you think. How many would you make after Forest? I mean, this is the 4th away game in a row, as we say, 3 games after that. And Sunday, the United game, is the big game this week, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the massive game. And I think I'll be making a fair few changes. I think one of the biggest ones is I think one of Declan Rice or Martin Zubimendi has to be rested. They're so crucial to the way this team ticks. And I think you can, like you say, the result obviously always matters, but this game is, you can take the handbrake, well, put the handbrake on a little bit, actually. Yeah. The opposite of what Arsene Wenger used to want. Yeah. But I think just resting one of them, allowing them to have a bit of break, even if you gave them 45 minutes each, then you can change things in midfield a little bit. I'd love to see Eze play, I think, getting those minutes back in. I'd love to see Kai Havertz come in and get a few minutes. I'd be surprised if he started, given obviously he's really struggled for minutes. But, if you could maybe give him 45 minutes, give him the second half. But again, it's going to be another packed defence because we know Inter are a great team defensively. You mentioned earlier when we were chatting that maybe they're not quite the same defence that they were when they've got to Champions League final and things like that, but they've only conceded 4 goals in the Champions League this season. We've only conceded 1, which is obviously great. We've got the best defensive record. They've got the second best. But you're going to need some creativity on there, and I suppose Eze's the man that could bring that. I wonder whether he'll play Saka. He rests him in that first half. I personally wouldn't. I would like to see Saka rested for Manchester United. I think it's a more important game, but I think Mikel just wants to win every game. He's that kind of manager, and I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a really, really strong lineup.
Yeah, it's the sort of game maybe in years gone by, Wenger would have quite happily thrown a few kids into the game, but Mikel Arteta just won't do that. We just know that. I remember being at Port Vale earlier this season and the team sheet comes out and Bukayo Saka's playing, William Saliba's playing, Eze's playing. He won't, he's not going to go and throw the kids in. And also, I think the Portsmouth game earlier this month kind of showed you don't have to. You can make 10 changes and you can still put a really strong team out. Saka, for me, is the one where I think he will play simply because he only played half an hour at Forest. But I would just be thinking, just have him a night off and save him for the weekend for Sunday, which is a huge game. Madueke can play again. He's not then going to play against United. Agree with you on the midfield. Just try and give one of those guys rest. Zubimendi has played a lot of minutes. I think we've seen how important he is to the way that team functions. But yeah, I think it's certainly feels like a great chance for Kai Havertz as well. We've seen flashes of him, and just to try and get even half an hour under. And Jesus as well, I think he'll be hoping to start because, we started talking right at the beginning, didn't we, about Gyökeres and how it's quite not working. All those other strikers in the squad will be thinking, if I can get a chance, I can show why I should start, and they'll all believe they can be, the Premier League striker, if you want to call it that.
It's quite hard. I think the Gyökeres thing is always an interesting debate because we had the debate, a lot of Arsenal fans, about the Portsmouth game, about whether or not to start him against Portsmouth just to build his confidence up. And I know Inter Milan is not the same as Portsmouth, but we know he's played well in the Champions League before. We know he's a Champions League striker. He did it on a consistent basis with Sporting. And you feel as though if you did play him against Inter and he got a goal, then that would only bring his confidence up more. I thought he was building his confidence against Chelsea. He looked really good, probably his best game in an Arsenal shirt. And maybe he could do that against Inter. But again, bringing in someone like Havertz, giving him minutes, Jesus more minutes than the tank is only going to help going forward. So it'd be interesting to see who he does go with. I think you're probably right. I think he probably will lean towards Jesus and then maybe bring Havertz on off the bench, and that would then suggest he's going to play Gyökeres against Manchester United. But he's showing a lot of faith in Gyökeres despite not having...
Yeah, and he's backed him a lot in his press conferences, which you'd expect, but he's more from his actions, I think, because I don't think anyone would have criticised Arteta or said he was wrong to take him out of the team, but he keeps picking him and he keeps backing him. Maybe I think he's probably of the view that it's going to take time to adapt and get it right to him. For me, I feel like Gyökeres has had a lot of chances, and I think there will be games where it does suit him and work. And I also think the Champions League is better suited and more space. It's similar with Martinelli, isn't it? There's bigger spaces, it feels like, more opportunity to kind of get yourself in the areas that you want to be in. That was what I wondered with Forest. I was looking at Milenkovic and Murillo, and I was thinking those two in the change room are probably thinking like, great, Gyökeres, arm wrestle, 2-3 big guys going against each other. Whereas when it's Jesus who comes on, they're thinking he's going to pull me out into the left channel, into the right. That's not what I want. So, I mean, I don't know if Gyökeres will play in Inter. I think he will play against Manchester United, though. And Arteta is kind of backing him for as long as he thinks it's right to do, and he's backing him on the pitch, which is whatever he says in press conferences about him is one thing, but if you keep picking him, that's the most faith you can show a player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose maybe it is a little bit of a show of faith if he doesn't play him against Inter Milan. To say, look,
rest him.
You're my striker for Manchester United. You're still my Premier League starting striker. I mean, this game, it's not, like you say, important in terms of our Champions League position, really, and what it means for going through and qualifying for that top 8 and I mean, getting a bit of rest rather than having to play those 2 playoff games. But it's still important for keeping that momentum going.
Yeah, definitely. And there is the change this year in the Champions League where the top 2, you will get the benefit of, you're going to get the second leg at home in the knockout game. So there is that carrot where you look at the semi-final and PSG when Arsenal went out. If Arsenal finish in the top 2 this year, when they get to a semi-final or quarter-final, you will play that second leg at home. So there is that carrot to go for. And Arteta, yeah, he is a big believer in the kind of momentum and all competitions helping. I think we've seen that in the Carabao Cup, and I think it's quite telling that he's almost targeting that competition as one that if Arsenal can win that, the springboard it will give them. And maybe as well, he's looking at this and thinking Tuesday to Sunday, that's quite a big gap. I think the player's going to get a few days off after the game on Tuesday, get back in on Friday. So maybe there is that benefit, and I think particularly around the kind of mood of the fan base after Forest, which wasn't great. Even though Arsenal did extend their lead, I think if you went to Inter, put in a good result, obviously very good memories there, all Arsenal fans will know, would certainly help going into that United game.